everyone, and welcome to the Power of One podcast. We're excited to be here today. We do not have our esteemed co-host Emilio. As you know, he is an active duty military, proudly serving the U.S. Marine Corps, and so he's on active duty today. So I will be taking this one solo, but very excited to meet with Vickie Wilson, who works for the CASA Las Vegas program. Vickie is a volunteer coordinator who's so generously offered to share some time with us today. Why don't you get started by telling us a little bit about your experience, your background, and how you got involved in the CASA program?
So I have been working in child welfare for close to 30 years. I started off working with Clark County Family Services in several positions to include direct care, ending up as a permanency supervisor, and then I transitioned over to the court side in volunteer management about 7 years ago. So I've had the pleasure of supporting children on both sides of the fence, and it's really been a great experience overall.
Yeah, it's been so awesome working with you. I have to tell you, you're a wealth of knowledge. You know everything about everything, which is so helpful to us as CASA volunteers to be able to know that there's always somebody there that has the answer. So thank you so much for that. Vickie, can you tell us about the role of a CASA supervisor, what they do, and why, and what the role is and why it's so important?
The role is important because the work is important that the advocate does for children in foster care. The basics is the simple stuff. I get to work, I check emails, people have specific questions, and I respond. Maybe the more complex stuff is the situational and case-by-case stuff, which requires the advocate to ask questions about the case for me to be familiar, help them navigate systemic questions, support their training and learning. And we also have to realize that everybody's an individual. Some of my CASA volunteers, they come in with that experience of maybe child welfare or counseling, maybe even legal experience. Other people, a school teacher who loves kids, retired stay-at-home mom. And so there's an opportunity to kind of show them kind of like, hey, this is a quick introduction to child welfare. This is what's going on in your case. Read documents, contact people, build conversations and community, learn, and most importantly, get to know your children. I think that's the basic structure for being a really great advocate and, of course, caring about the outcome of children in foster care. So as a supervisor, I really have to kind of gauge, like, what does this advocate need in order to be successful in this role and to feel successful in this role?
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, for me, one of the things that's most critical, and I guess that I want you to know and want the team to know, is my favorite aspect is knowing that there's always somebody there to help. If my supervisor isn't available, there's always somebody in the office that I can call that I know is going to jump right in. I mean, you and I have talked about my case, even though you're not my particular supervisor, so many times. You know my kids, you know everything about them, and it makes the job of a volunteer so much easier.
Yeah, we are lucky to be a part of a team where we really feel like everyone is everyone's responsibility. If a supervisor is out, it is very easy to pick up that conversation with another supervisor. We also have opportunities like CASA Night Out, the Connection Center, that will informally bring CASA volunteers together. You might be sitting at a table with a group of people you have never met before.
True.
Some who have more experience, less experience. So some may lean on you to say, hey, I'm going to court on Friday. What will that feel like? What do I do? What do I say? Others, it's like, I've written 30 CASA reports. What do you need to know? So it's a really great community to be a part of. But that's something that I want to be a part of. I want someone to feel like if they have a question, if they have a concern, they can bring it to anyone in the CASA program, whether it be a CASA supervisor, a peer coordinator, another CASA volunteer, and that you'll feel that support. And that extends to even after hours. Our peer coordinators, all of their information is in our volunteer management system. So with one click of an email or a text or whatever the case may be, you can reach out to someone, a phone call. Many of my CASA volunteers also have my personal number, and I know I'm not the only one as well. So I really do want people to feel like if I have a question or a concern, I can reach out to someone from the CASA program.
Yeah.
Clark County Family Services also has an after-hours emergency number. There are times when I've had to refer CASA volunteers to say, hey, this is something that the department needs to be brought into. This is that number. You can feel free to reach out, or please feel free to give this caregiver this information.
Right, right. You talked about peer coordinators. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what a peer coordinator is?
Yeah, so our program is brought up based on a concept of a peer coordinator to support a smaller group of volunteers. So a peer coordinator is an experienced CASA volunteer who's been with the program for at least a year. And they agree to support a group of volunteers, usually about 10. Our expectation is that they will reach out to those peers a little more frequently than maybe they would speak to their supervisors. They'll get together collectively. I go to a lot of my peer group meetings. I think I have at least 3 meetings here at the Connection Center this month. And it's an opportunity to really talk to someone that's experienced in the program in the same way that you are.
So it's interesting. Me as a peer coordinator, what I would tell you is I spend the most amount of time with my brand new volunteers, right? People who are newer to the role as they're just getting started. And in the beginning, they're always feeling like, oh, if I call my supervisor, I don't want them to know that I don't know something, or, it's so much easier to call you as my peer coordinator than it is to them. And then you give them 6 months bonding with their supervisor, getting to know them. And the next thing you know, they're like, oh, we're good. We can talk about anything. I can be open. I can be honest. You guys are just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much.
No, it's interesting to see who the volunteer gravitates towards. I've seen it happen with peer coordinators, sometimes CASA volunteers that you've gone through training with. Some people immediately reach out and kind of cling on to their supervisor. But the reality is everyone's different. And so we just want to make sure that however or whomever you feel most comfortable with, you have that contact information or you have that person as a part of your team so that you can go ahead and reach out to them.
Yeah, makes sense. And part of that, I'm sure, is the emotional toll that this kind of role can take on people, right? So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and how you specifically support volunteers through some of that?
Yeah, you know what? I start with knowing the case and doing my best to know the volunteer over time. It can be difficult. Sometimes we don't get the outcomes that we want, or sometimes it is really slow. And I believe that when CASA volunteers come into this, they immediately go to how do we fix it? How do we solve problems? And the reality is that some of this stuff takes a lot of time. We don't have control over everything, like wanting a home for your kiddos. It's like, wow, my kids are separated. I would love for them to live together.
Love it.
And the department is basically saying there are no resources for them at this point in time. Or my kiddo needs to be adopted. And they're saying right now that there's no one who's expressed an interest in adoption. And that can be really hard because we have such wonderful, great kids. CASA volunteers, a lot of times you see your kids at your best. You see their strengths and you see their weaknesses. And I have heard even judges comment, like, I read the CASA report and I really get a good sense of who this child is. And when you know that child that well, and it seems like what they need is so far away, or I don't even know how to get there, I just know that this kid needs something that's not being offered right now. And how do you wake up every single day and try again and try again and try again when we're just not getting there as quickly as we want to?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of times, I just try to tell the CASA volunteers, first of all, let's focus on the things we can actually fix. Sometimes it is academic stuff. Sometimes it's just showing up. For me, I always feel like it's really important for people to know that someone actually cares. Some of our kids in foster care, their perception of I am in foster care is no one cares about me. Majority of my friends have a mom or a dad or parents, or they at least live with relatives. And some of our children are being basically told that no one wants you, or they feel that no one wants them
like it
because they're in the foster care system, or they're in a foster home, or they're in a congregate care facility. So when they finally have that CASA show up, even if the children don't always have our desired behaviors, and we know that they have the ability to do better, or at least we believe that, knowing that somebody cares, like I mentioned to you and speaking about your kiddo at another conversation. I know your kid pretty well. I've seen her at a couple of events, and she had a recent placement change, and she let me know that she had a placement change, and I must have given a look of concern because she looked over me immediately and she said, I'm okay. I want you to know I'm okay. And that let me know that she knows that I actually care about her. And like I said, I don't supervise you. She's not directly connected to me in that way as far as assignment, but I genuinely care about her. And when kids know that you care about them, just because I know that you know my CASA, I know that you've asked questions, I know that you check in on me, sometimes that makes a difference, just knowing that somebody cared.
It's interesting. You talk about knowing her so well. And I can remember the first time I came into the office, 2 kids, both teenagers, a boy and a girl, and came in and you had asked just a simple question. I don't remember how you phrased it, but something about like, do you know what Jen's role is, right? And what she's here to do. And I feel like their answer was they were so proud to be able to answer that question and to feel like, yes, I actually do know. And it was just, it was absolutely amazing. And they tell me all the time when they see you out in the community or they see you at events or they see other supervisors. And it's so heartwarming for me as a volunteer to know I'm not in this alone, right? So not only do the kids feel this way, but I as a volunteer know there's other people out there that know about my kid, that have taken the time to read the case notes, to read all the information that I provide, to read the court reports, and to care about them almost as much as I do.
Yeah, and it's the little things. Like I encourage all of my CASA volunteers, I'm like, when you write your court report, please put in a picture. And I've had feedback from judges to say, you know what? that little bit makes a little bit of difference, because I feel like I get a better sense of who your child is, the activities that you do, the restaurants that they like, what they're into, some of the things that they struggle with. It's not quite as, I don't know how to describe the difference from the Clark County Family Service reports versus CASA reports, but it seems a bit more humanizing. Like I understand them as a person and a human being from the CASA report.
That's what I always tell. So I am a peer coordinator as well. And that's what I always tell my new volunteers is the difference between the reports, in my experience, is really that we bring the child to life, right? And remind the judge who's reading that there's a child at the end of this, and humanize them. Right. So they read it and they realize, Bobby likes sports. He wants to be an astronaut when he grows up, or whatever that might be, right, for those particular kids. But it just reminds them that there's somebody there. Not that the Clark County Family Services reports don't do that. The caseworkers are amazing that we work with, and they do know these kids. It's just a different take, right? There's just a different connection and a different level.
Yes.
That our volunteers
and level
have.
of engagement. I've seen CASA reports that have 100, 200, 300 contacts within a 6-month period of time. Obviously with various team members, but nonetheless, it really shows this CASA volunteer is making a lot of connection.
Exactly. Yep. So that's a great segue and a great transition. So those kinds of cases are obviously very complex if you've had that many contacts and things that you've had to go through with that. How do you help a volunteer through that when they have a particularly complex case? What does that look like?
I think the first step is understanding a CASA volunteer and understanding that case and where are the deficits at. Now, the reality is that the CASA volunteer is asked to have an independent perspective. So as a supervisor, it is not my job to get all of my CASA volunteers to think like me. It really is to help them understand the system, understand some of the challenging words, lingo, this, that, the other, some of the historical documents. Sometimes I pull documents so that they can review them if they don't already exist in our volunteer management system. But we need to understand, ask good questions. Ask good questions to the right person who can actually help you out. And believe it or not, sometimes that's a little bit different in every case. Sometimes the CAP attorney, the child's attorney project person, is the most involved person in that case. They have the most contact information. Maybe the Clark County Family Services worker has changed recently. Sometimes other dynamics come on and you're like, wow, this caregiver is really very informed about the history and the medications and this, that, the other. And so you start to build those relationships. And so if a CASA volunteer is having challenges with, let's say, building that relationship with that caregiver, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you've done. Let's talk about maybe the level of engagement, how you're reaching out. Sometimes as a supervisor, I have reached out to caregivers and kind of said, hey, this child has a CASA. Let me explain that to you. Let me tell you about their role. Let me tell you how they're different from other people. Sometimes just better understanding Clark County Family Services and who does what, like what's happening. I used to be a child-specific adoption recruiter, so I know a lot about that role. I love that role as well. So when some people talk about recruitment, they just kind of think it's a yes/no question. Is somebody recruiting for your kid? Yes, no. But I'm going to be like, okay, hold on. Have they participated in Wednesday's Child? Do they have a heart gallery profile? Who's the recruiter on this? Is it a, so I'm going to ask a bit more in-depth questions. And then that kind of helps the person be like, wait a minute, there are some specific questions. Let's talk about recruitment. Let's talk about follow-up. So it really helps them understand like, okay, now I have kind of like some tools so that when I go back and talk to Clark County Family Services, I understand the types of questions that maybe I should be asking. And then sometimes helping them understand that, this is reaching a bit far. They're like, hey, I want to visit 7 days a week because I really want to know this child. Is 7 days a week really necessary? And is that something?
Can you consistently do it? Right?
Yes. And is that a bit much for a caregiver who's maybe caring for other children? Right. So let's kind of balance that out. I understand you want to see your child. It's a new case. But maybe let's be also considerate of the fact that the caregiver has other team members that they're also interacting with. And they want to build a normal family dynamic as well. So let's figure out a balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. How about family dynamics? Any complexities there, and how do you advise CASA volunteers to deal with those?
With the birth family?
Well, family dynamics in general, right? So birth family, yes. I immediately went to maybe kids that aren't living together, right? Siblings that are separated, things like that.
Yeah, I have some pretty strong feelings about separated siblings. I really feel like children in foster care deserve normalcy, as much normalcy as we can give them. And being in the foster care system is not normal. Even with well-intended, very smart, very capable people, being in foster care is still very awkward. And so one of the things, unfortunately, that foster care sometimes do is it separates siblings. And so helping the CASA volunteer understand that a part of their role may be really bringing it to the forefront of the team's priority list. We need to figure out, if they are not living together, how often can we bring them together? Yeah. Who can be a part of that? Who can be a part of transporting? If something has been confirmed in court and agreed to and discussed, hey, let's revisit that. We talked about that in court. We have court coming up. Who said they would do what, and what can we do to bring them together? It's just really hard. Sometimes children also get adopted apart from each other. And so what does that look like? What are we talking about as far as making sure that they have connection after adoption? I just think that sometimes we want to revisit those conversations about what we're doing. And sometimes the decisions that we make early on have lifelong consequences. And CASA volunteers are sometimes brought into the case years after it already started. So there's many things that may have taken place that you weren't involved in, but now let's really catch up. This is where we're at. This is what's happening. I have siblings that are aged out. I actually have siblings that have aged out and then stepped up as caregivers of their younger siblings.
Oh, fantastic.
I have taken quite a few CASA cases where the sibling is the primary caregiver. And so you have people who've experienced the foster care system now trying to step up and be a caregiver for their siblings. And it can be a real struggle going from sibling to caregiver and navigating that.
Whole new role.
CASA volunteers have done a great job of being support for that family dynamic. And so really kind of leaning into it, especially if it's not something that you've experienced yourself, what that means to that child. And that sometimes children are experiencing things that we cannot even begin to understand. And that for some of our youth, their sibling is their last person within their family system that's still around. So what can we do to kind of make sure that we hold on to the bonds that are appropriate?
So critical for these kids. Yeah, for sure. So what would you say are some of the more common challenges that CASA volunteers face?
Common challenges. Let's see. Some of the initial ones, I think, are building relationships with that team. You get assigned, people get a notice that says there's a CASA volunteer. You start reaching out to people. Your supervisor sends an immediate email, but they kind of already have their groove going on. They got their team emails already set. You're not on it. So reminding people, hey, when there's a next team meeting, whatever kind it is, make sure you invite the CASA volunteer. Sometimes your opinion is different than other people's opinion.
You taught me this.
Yeah, that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge because sometimes people feel disrespected or they feel hurt or they feel like, you're new to this case and I've been on it for a while and I know better than you. And the reality is that the judge wants a CASA on this case. They want that new opinion. They want that clarity. They want your independent perspective. So they brought you onto this case because they want that opinion. And sometimes it does hurt a little bit from people who've been on the case and they feel like you're stirring up the pot. Yep. But the reality is you were brought in to bring new ingredients to this case. We're trying to make sure that the judge has the most important decisions because they have to make big choices, and they are not involved in the day-to-day or sometimes not even the month-to-month. And so what can we bring to them so that they better understand the case dynamics? What's happening? What's going well? What's not going well? And so building those team relationships can be challenging. What else? Not getting the outcome that we want. Kiddos not getting what they deserve.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. We don't know about it. You hear other people saying how great life is and wonderful. They found the most amazing caregiver 2 weeks after being placed in foster care. And you're like, it's been years. Mm-hmm. It has been years. And it's really hard when our kids deserve so much more.
Well, it's heartbreaking.
It's hard beyond heartbreaking. It is devastating. Let me tell you. I've done direct care before, and there's something about a kiddo who's been through trauma, big trauma, that it just looks different. It looks different. It feels different. It is just gut-wrenching to see children who've experienced trauma at the level that some of our kiddos have, from physical abuse to sexual abuse to just feeling left behind. I've gone to court where a judge, I remember one time reached out to a kiddo and said, do you know of anybody who would want you? And it was some teenagers, and they were like, Judge, honestly, we don't know anybody that would want us. And I could not imagine ever being at that level in life where I can't even think of one person who might want me. And for some of our children, that's their reality.
And for some of these kids, it is their CASA volunteer. I know for me, my kiddo, as you know, she's been in 17 placements. So 17 times people have said to her, you need to go, right? Well, it may not be that we don't want you. There have been, various circumstances around that, but this isn't the place for you anymore. Mm-hmm. And so to get that rejection all those times, I find that she gets defensive easily, but she loves deeply. When she does get connected, that's a that's a forever kind of thing right there. And
Yeah. And when people hear that children have gone through that many placements, I think sometimes it's easy to say, oh, it must be something wrong with the kiddo, or it must be them.
it gets said all the time.
But here's the kicker. I know your kid.
Yeah.
She truly is genuinely a wonderful human being. She loves the arts, and she's witty, and she is smart, and she is charismatic, and she is likable. And so I know that her family is out there. The reality is that her family hasn't been asked. Whatever it is, they don't know her story. They don't know where she's at, and it's more than just one. There are probably multiple families that she would be an amazing addition to. And so that is really hard. And I wish that more caregivers and people who are considering either foster care or adoption would have an opportunity to see more of what the CASA sees.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they could. You just have to spend a little bit of time.
They do.
It's not hard, right? It's just a little bit of time spent with these kids to really get to see who they are, and for them to build just a little bit of trust, and then they open up and share with you. They start to be a little more comfortable and feel like, yeah, this one's okay. I can.
And to show up.
And she's going to keep showing up.
Yeah, just to show up. Even when they make not the greatest choices, show up. What's going on?
Yep.
And I hear so many great stories from especially our older youth about their CASA volunteers. And like sometimes I do tabling events, and some random kid will come up to me and be like, I have a CASA, and my CASA is so-and-so, and they're great. And I'm like, thank you so much for letting me know that. So the pride that I see in so many of our youth for having this advocate stand up for them, and they know your names, they know so much about you. And then sometimes I talk to youth and they're like, other team members, and it's like, yeah, it's been through so many foster homes and so many case managers and this, that, the other, and I've had one CASA, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, no question. So Vickie, what do you want the community to understand? What if you had one thing that you wanted to tell them, what would that be about the importance of having a CASA supervisor?
Having a CASA supervisor matters because CASA volunteers matter. Children in foster care matter. We need to step up, and we need to be a part of the solution for children. Not everybody's in a position to do everything, but there's something that can be done by everyone. And so if being an advocate is a good fit for you, if you feel like I can step up, I can have an independent voice, I like children, and I want to be engaged and active, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It's hard for me to talk about being a CASA supervisor without talking about the wonderful work that CASA volunteers do and the impact that we have to children in foster care. Children in foster care deserve normalcy. They deserve great childhood experiences. And sometimes the CASA volunteer is the difference between where they are and where we want children to be. And I am so proud to supervise such amazing, great, wonderful people who truly are some of the most wonderful human beings that I know, because they stepped up and stepped in when it mattered.
Well, thank you so much for that. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for what you do, because you really do. You make my life so much easier having a supervisor. You're not even my supervisor, but having a whole team and be like that makes things so much easier. So thank you so much for being here today. I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers for being with us today on The Power of One. Join us next time, where we will have our co-host Emilio for a future episode available for us. I know we're all missing him as much as I am. And as Vickie just shared with everyone, if your heart is ready and the time is right, please consider getting involved. We need more volunteers. Come join us in changing a child's story. Thank you so much.